My father's house was enveloped in a heavy silence, as if the very air was carrying the pain of loss. Since he passed away a week ago, every corner of the house seemed to echo his memories. I was standing in the living room, surrounded by boxes that I still didn't have the courage to open. The smell of the coffee I had made to help me get through that day mixed with the scent of aged wood, a scent that always reminded me of childhood. With a deep sigh, I decided it was time to start. One step at a time, I repeated to myself as I opened the first box. Inside, I found a pile of yellowed letters, carefully tied with frayed string. The handwriting was unmistakable. They were letters that my father had written to my mother. My heart raced as I flipped through the pages, and I soon found myself immersed in a world that had been hidden for a long time. "My love," one letter began, "every day without you is like an endless winter. I miss you every moment." The words were like a spell, bringing up feelings I didn't know still existed. It was difficult to imagine my father, a strong and silent man, capable of expressing so much love. Tears began to run down my face as I read passages that revealed a deep love, a love that had not disappeared with my mother's death, but that had turned into longing. "He really loved her," I muttered to myself, realizing how much I had underestimated the intensity of their relationship. I closed my eyes and let the memories invade my mind. I remembered the smiles exchanged, the laughter during family dinners, and the way my father always spoke about my mother with a special reverence. "Sarah, she was the light of my life," he used to say. That light had gone out, but his letters were a testimony that the flame of love still burned in his heart. After a while, I realized that I needed a breath of fresh air, a break from that painful nostalgia. I was feeling lost, as if the routine of life had been dismantled. I then decided, on impulse, that I would visit a pawn shop in the city center. There was always something intriguing about the place, and I believed I could find something that connected me to my family's past. Any object, a memory that would bring my father back in some way. As soon as I arrived at the store, the bell on the door rang, announcing my entry. The space was crammed with things: antique furniture, clocks, and a variety of objects that told stories I could barely imagine. The smell of dust and aged wood enveloped me, and I began to walk slowly, examining each item. There was a sense of mystery in the air, as if every object was waiting to be discovered. "Can I help you with something?" asked an elderly man with a gentle smile. "I'm just looking," I replied, trying to hide the confusion I felt inside me. But as I walked through the store, something in the window caught my eye. It was a wedding ring, gleaming in the dim light. My heart skipped a beat when I recognized him. "It can't be," I muttered, moving closer to the window. It was the ring my father had lost years ago, a symbol of the love he still held for my mother. The glow of the object triggered a rush of memories, and I found myself enveloped in a storm of emotions. How did he end up here? I thought, as I touched the glass of the window with my fingertips, as if that could bring the past back to life. "That ring is special, isn't it?" commented the man, noticing my interest. "Yes, it was my father's," I replied, my voice almost cracking. "He lost it many years ago. Well, someone brought it here as a pledge. The story of this ring is deeper than it seems," he said, looking into my eyes with an intensity that made me feel like he knew more than he was letting on. At that moment, I decided I needed to know more. The ring was a connection to my father, a piece of his story that I wasn't willing to let go. And so, with my heart racing and my mind full of questions, I prepared to discover what else that place could reveal. The lights in the pawn shop were low, and the smell of old furniture and forgotten objects hung in the air. My fingers trembled slightly as I turned the ring between my hands, the stone's shine reflecting memories of a distant past. It was my father's wedding ring, the one he always said he lost in a moment of despair. And now, there it was, like an echo of a love that never faded. "You know, this ring has a sad story," said Charlie, the store owner, as he approached me. His voice was soft, but there was a weight to his words that made me feel a lump in my throat. "The last owner left it here after his life took an unexpected turn." "Like this?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. Charlie sighed, looking at the floor for a moment. He was a man called David. He had a love like the rest of us. But fate, oh fate can be cruel. He paused, as if pondering whether to continue. David loved a married woman. Their love, although sincere, brought much suffering. I felt a chill down my spine. Are you saying that ring belonged to someone who loved my mother? Yes, that's what I heard, Charlie replied, his gaze penetrating my eyes. But I'm not the one to tell that story. What I can say is that love can take us to dark places. Sometimes the pain of loss is greater than anything else. My heart accelerated. The idea that there was more to my father and mother's life story than I knew made me uneasy. I had always thought their love was pure, unwavering. But what if there was something hidden, something they never shared with me? Can I take this ring? The question came out almost as a whisper. I feel like I need him. Charlie nodded slowly. If it's what you want, it's yours. The past is yours to carry, whether you want it or not. But remember, what you carry may not just be love, but also the pain of a secret. With the ring in hand, I left the store with mixed feelings. The sun was setting, turning the sky orange and pink, and I felt a little lighter, but at the same time, the weight of the new information was with me. As I walked, memories of my father came and went, each more vivid than the last. I remembered her stories about my mother, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her, as if she were still there, alive and full of love. Sarah! A voice interrupted my thoughts. I looked up and saw a woman I didn't recognize, but her expression was familiar. Sarah Thompson, right? Yes, it's me, I replied, somewhat disconcerted. I'm sorry, but... Who are you? Emily. I was friends with your mother. She smiled, but there was a sadness in her eyes. I was trying to find her. Every time I think about her, I feel like a part of me has lost her too. Those words echoed inside me. Did you know her well? More than you know. There were secrets she never shared, but there was also a love that defined her. Emily paused, as if choosing her words carefully. Your mother had a light that attracted people. She talked a lot about you and your father. I watched her intrigued. Secrets? What kind of secrets? Ah, that's a long story. She laughed softly, but soon her expression became serious. Why don't we have coffee? I can tell you some things you might not know about them. The idea of hearing more about my mother appealed to me. Yes, I'd love to. Let's go. As we walked together, the weight of the ring in my bag felt lighter, as if it were guiding me to a truth I didn't yet know. With every step, I felt like the bonds of my family were knitting together again, and maybe, just maybe, I was about to discover what it truly meant to be part of that forgotten heritage. Sitting at a coffee table, steaming cup in my hands, I looked at Emily, who had become an unexpected connection to my family's past. The aroma of fresh coffee mixed with the vanilla perfume she wore, and I felt that this moment was more than just a conversation. It was a trip to the heart of the memories that I was trying to understand. You know, Sarah, she began, looking out the window where sunlight filtered through the leaves of the trees. Your mother was always a strong woman. She faced so many things, but she always did it with a smile. Sometimes I wonder how she did it. I wonder too, I replied, a lump forming in my throat. I knew her as the loving mother, but I always felt there was so much more to her. Things I never knew. Emily turned to me, her eyes shining with a mix of nostalgia and sadness. She told me about you and your brothers. The love she felt for all of you was immense. But there was a side of her that she kept under lock and key. A side I never knew, I murmured, thinking about the letters I had found at my father's house and how they revealed a deep love but also a pain that permeated their lives. What do you know about this? A long time ago, your mother and I were inseparable. She confided in me about her fears and insecurities. There was a diary she kept, filled with her thoughts and reflections. I always encouraged her to write, to let her emotions flow. But after his death, I didn't have the courage to look for that diary. Do you still have that diary? I asked, curiosity growing inside me. I needed to understand the layers of love and pain that shaped my family. Yes, it's kept in my house. I never knew if I should give it back to you or if it was better to leave it alone, Emily confided, her eyes getting lost in memories. I'd like to see him, I said, determination taking hold of me. I need to understand. I want to know who my mother was, who she really was. And maybe that will help me deal with the loss. Emily nodded, her gaze now full of understanding. So how about I show you? We can go there now. My heart beat faster in my chest as the idea took shape. Yes, let's go. As we walked toward Emily's house, I couldn't help but think about how many truths were hidden and how they could change the way I viewed my own life. What would I find in that diary? Were they just memories or revelations that could illuminate shadows I didn't know existed? We arrived at Emily's house, which had a vintage charm, with walls adorned with old photos. She led me to the guest room, which was filled with books and objects that seemed to tell their own stories. It's here, Emily said, pulling a box from under the bed. When he opened it, I could see the diary, its pages yellowed and worn by time. I hope this helps. With my hands shaking slightly, I picked up the diary and looked through it. The cover was simple, but the handwritten words inside promised a treasure trove of emotions and stories. Thank you, Emily. This means a lot to me. I just hope you find peace in her words, he replied, a sad smile on his lips. I sat on the bed, the diary open on my lap, and began flipping through the pages. Each letter seemed to vibrate with my mother's essence, and I felt closer to her than ever before. So what did you find? Emily asked, watching me carefully. I still don't know, I replied, eyes fixed on the words. But I feel like this journey is just beginning. And with that, I dove into the pages of the diary, ready to discover the secrets that shaped my family and the love that, even in pain, always persisted. With the diary in hand, I felt a weight and a lightness at the same time. With each page I turned, I delved deeper into a world I barely knew, a world where love and pain intertwined in ways I couldn't imagine. My mother, a woman full of life, had a story that now unfolded before me, revealing not only her joys, but also her anguish. Did you know your mother had this diary? Emily asked, watching my face as I read. She was sitting across from me, a steaming cup of coffee in her hands. No, I never knew. She never talked about it, I replied, my voice shaking a little. She was always so private about the past, like there was something she would rather leave buried. Sometimes people keep secrets to protect us, but it can come at a high price, Emily said, her gaze distant. I continued reading, absorbing every word. There was a section that talked about how my mother met my father, how their love blossomed amid difficulties and uncertainty. But soon the words began to change, becoming darker. I feel like something is chasing me, something I can't ignore. Sometimes I wonder if the past can really be left behind, or if it always comes back to haunt us. My heart raced. What could be so terrifying that it would make her think that way? My gaze caught on a specific paragraph, where she mentioned a conversation she had with a friend. Something about a secret that shouldn't have been kept. Felt cold. What could it be? Sarah, are you okay? Emily interrupted my thoughts, worried. I don't know. It's like there's a shadow hanging over it all, I replied, my voice breaking. She talks about something that disturbs her, but doesn't say what it is. Maybe it's time for you to confront your family. They may know more than you think, Emily suggested, leaning forward. Confront? I don't know if I'm ready for this. My mind was a storm. What I sought was the truth, but now that I was so close, fear began to creep in. Sometimes facing the truth is the only way to find peace, Emily spoke softly. If you don't, these questions will continue to haunt you. After a while, I decided I needed more time to process everything. I thanked Emily for the company and the opportunity to read the diary. When I left, the city seemed different, as if the streets I knew were now filled with secrets. Every corner I passed made me think about the stories that were hidden beneath the surface. Night came, and I sat on my couch, the diary beside me. The ring I had bought was on the table, glistening in the soft light of the lamp. I looked at the ring and thought about what it represented. Love, loss, and now a symbol of a past that I needed to uncover. What else did I not know about my mother? And what was the secret she carried? I closed my eyes, trying to find some peace. But what I really needed was courage. The courage to ask, to listen, and perhaps to discover something that could change everything. I stood up determined. I needed to see my family, talk to my brothers, and understand what had really happened. But before all that, I took a deep breath, trying to remember the love that had always permeated my parents' lives, even in difficult times. The wedding ring, now in my possession, seemed to pulse with her memories. Love has always prevailed, I murmured to myself, searching for that strength. Tomorrow would be a new day, and I was ready to face whatever came my way. The table was set, and the smell of roast chicken filled the house, but the atmosphere was anything but welcoming. I looked at the faces of my brothers, Mark and Lisa, feeling the tension in the air like a rope about to snap. The idea of bringing the family together to discuss the past seemed more reckless than good intention. The memories I had unearthed from Mom's diary were fresh in my mind, and I knew it wouldn't be easy. "Do you really think this is a good idea, Sarah?" Mark asked, his voice thick with skepticism as he helped himself to some mashed potatoes. "Talking about the diary and everything. It's not going to change anything." "I need you to know," I replied, trying to remain calm. "The diary contains information that can help us better understand our mother and what happened to her." Lisa's gaze, who had been silent until then, lifted to me. "You're talking about her death, aren't you? What did you find, Sarah?" Her tone was more concerned than accusatory, but I realized that the truth, as painful as it was, needed to be revealed. "Yes, I found a passage that mentions something she never told anyone. Something about the day of the accident." My voice trailed off for a moment, and I took a deep breath before continuing. "She said there was something that was bothering her, something that didn't make sense." Mark put down his fork and stared at me, his expression changing from skepticism to genuine concern. "What are you saying? Do you believe her death was not accidental? That she had secrets?" "I don't know," I admitted, vulnerability dripping into my voice. "But we need to talk about this. We need to understand what happened to our mother." Lisa shook her head, looking more confused than ever. "This is a lot to process, Sarah. I don't know if I'm ready to hear this right now. But we need it. The diary is here, and I can't keep it to myself." I looked into their eyes, trying to convey the urgency of the discovery. She wrote that she felt there was something dark in her life, something that was consuming her. It could be that this is related to what happened on the day of the accident. The silence that followed was deafening. Each of us seemed to absorb the weight of the words. The roast chicken, which had once seemed so inviting, was now just an irrelevant detail in a conversation that could change everything. "What if it's true?" Mark broke the silence, his voice low but firm. "What if Mom's death wasn't an accident? That would change everything for us. It would make us question everything we believe." "I don't want to believe that she would have done something like that," Lisa murmured, the sadness in her gaze making my heart clench. "But at the same time, we need to know the truth. We need to find answers," I said resolutely. "And it starts here today among us." Mark took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on me. "If you're willing to face this, so am I. But we need to be careful. What we want to discover may be more painful than we imagine." "I agree," I added, feeling that the conversation was unfolding in an unexpectedly healthy way. "But we cannot let fear stop us from seeking the truth. That's what Mommy deserves." Lisa, who had been silent until then, finally spoke. "If the diary has the answers we need, then we should read it together, no matter how difficult it is." I looked at my brothers, feeling a surge of hope. The pain was there, but there was also a desire for unity. Whatever we discovered, we would do it together. I looked at the plate again, feeling that this meal, although filled with sadness, was also a sign that we were ready to face what the future had in store for us. "Let's do it," I said, with a faint smile of encouragement. "Let's honor Mom's memory, no matter what that means." The tension began to dissipate, although the shadow of what was yet to come remained looming over us. Dinner followed, but now there was a new purpose in our conversations, a new understanding that we were on this journey together, ready to face the secrets that the past held. The early hours of the next morning were silent, but the tension from the night before still hung in the air. I looked out my bedroom window, watching the leaves on the trees moving gently in the breeze. Life continued outside, but inside me everything seemed in conflict. I decided that I needed to understand more about my mother's past and, consequently, about the man who owned the ring, David. I knew that the path I chose would not be easy, but I could not let myself be led by fear. With my heart racing, I took the wedding ring I had bought at the pawn shop and put it on my finger, like a talisman that would give me courage. It was time to confront David. He should have answers, because his past was intertwined with my family's history. I drove to the small house where David lived. The street was quiet, surrounded by trees and flowers, but the beauty around me couldn't calm me down. When I arrived, I took a deep breath and knocked on the door. After a few moments, he appeared. David was an older man, with gray hair and a look that reflected a life full of untold stories. "Sarah." He greeted me, confused. "We need to talk, David." The firmness in my voice surprised me. He hesitated but eventually invited me in. The inside of the house had an air of disorder, as if time had stopped there. We sat at the table, and I wasted no time. "I know you had a relationship with my mother," she said, looking at him. "The ring I bought, it was hers, wasn't it?" David sighed, as if he had been carrying a weight for a long time. "Yes, Sarah. The ring was hers. I loved your mother." I felt my heart squeeze. The revelation was devastating, but there was more to the story. "What happened?" I asked, my voice shaking. "It was a forbidden love," he said, looking down. "I was married, and your mother, well, she had her own demons. We found ourselves in a moment of fragility. Her life was complicated, and I didn't have the courage to let her know how deeply I loved her." "What about your death?" I questioned, the lump in my throat tightening. "I always heard it was an accident." He hesitated again, seeming to struggle with the words. "It was an accident, but—" David paused, the tension in the air was palpable. "There was much more involved. Your mother was in a dark place, Sarah. It was running away." Those words hit me like lightning. I had no idea what he was implying. Running away from what? I insisted, my voice breaking. "I shouldn't be telling you this, but there was a conflict between us. She wanted to leave everything behind, and I didn't let her. On the day of her death, she was about to make a decision, one that would change our lives forever." Hearing those words, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, but the pain of what he was saying was almost unbearable. "You loved her, but you didn't help her. You've left her trapped in a cycle of pain, David." I shouted, anger exploding. "How could you? I know I'm guilty, but it wasn't for lack of love. I just didn't have the courage to fight for her." He looked into my eyes, and there was regret in them. Silence. I needed time to process all of this. Then the door opened, and my brothers, Mark and Lisa, walked in. They looked worried, as if they knew something was wrong. "Sarah, what's going on?" Mark asked, his gaze switching between me and David. The tension in the room increased. I knew it was the right time to confront all the secrets. "David was our mother's lover," he said, his voice firm. "He has information that could help us understand what really happened to her." My brothers' faces turned pale, and the air felt heavy with the revelation. David looked at them, and the guilt in his eyes was undeniable. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I never wanted to cause you pain. So what are we going to do now?" Lisa asked. The vulnerability in her voice was evident. "We have to deal with this as a family," I said, feeling the strength emanating from us. "We have to confront our past, understand the truth, and find a way to move forward." So, in that emotionally charged environment, we began to chart a path to healing. The truth, although painful, became a way to unite us. The ring on my finger seemed to shine more brightly, now representing not only love, but also the resilience and strength we needed to face everything that was to come.